The contractor's voice shook when he said, "Do not come alone. Bring your children." And in that moment, I knew my husband had taken secrets to the grave. I was standing in the back row of the small memorial chapel in Dallas, holding a folded program with my late husband's name printed in gray ink when my phone vibrated in my palm. I almost ignored it. Jonathan had been gone for a year, and I had learned the hard way that most interruptions no longer mattered. But something about the insistence of the vibration made my chest tighten. The screen showed an unfamiliar number, saved only as renovation crew. I stepped quietly into the hallway, the scent of polished wood and old flowers clinging to the air, and answered. "Mrs. Carter," the man said, clearing his throat. "This is Danielle. We're working on your husband's office. I need you to come by the house today." There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable. "Is something wrong?" I asked. Another pause, then more quietly. "Please don't come alone. Bring your children. Both of them." My fingers went cold around the phone. I asked him what he meant, what they had found, but he refused to explain. He repeated the same sentence, slower this time, as if choosing each word carefully. "Do not come alone." The line went dead. I stood there in the hallway, listening to the muffled sound of the memorial service continuing behind me, and felt the ground beneath everything I thought I knew begin to shift. Jonathan Carter had been a respected urban architect, the kind of man people trusted with long-term city projects and quiet advice. For nearly 4 decades, I believed I knew every corner of his life. We raised 2 sons together. We shared dinners, holidays, arguments, reconciliations. I had watched him sketch buildings at the kitchen table late into the night, his pencils steady, his mind always somewhere far ahead. But the room Daniel was renovating was the one place I had avoided since Jonathan died. His office, the space where he spent his final hours 3 weeks earlier, on what would have been our 39th wedding anniversary. I had finally decided to let it change. I told myself it was time to turn the room into something brighter, something forward-facing, a reading room for the grandchildren, a place that did not smell like old paper and silence. Now a stranger was telling me to bring my sons like witnesses. I called Ryan first, my oldest, practical, always in control. Then Lucas, gentler, more observant. Neither of them liked being summoned, but neither of them argued when they heard the strain in my voice. I drove home through familiar Dallas streets that suddenly felt foreign, my thoughts circling one impossible question. What could my husband have built that still needed guarding after his death? By the time I turned onto our street, both of my sons' cars were already parked in the driveway. They were standing side by side near the front door, waiting, and I knew before I even stepped out of the car that whatever waited inside that house was about to change all of our lives. The house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Not haunted, not sad, just disturbed, like a place that had been opened without permission. Daniel met us in the entryway, his hard hat tucked under his arm, his face pale beneath the layer of dust clinging to his shirt. He avoided my eyes at first, nodding briefly to Ryan and Lucas before gesturing down the hallway. "Thank you for coming so quickly," he said. "I would not have called if it was not serious." Ryan crossed his arms. "What exactly did you find?" Daniel swallowed. "It is better if I show you." We followed him past the kitchen, past the familiar photographs lining the walls, Jonathan holding the boys on his shoulders, Jonathan and me at the Riverwalk downtown, Jonathan smiling in ways that suddenly felt rehearsed. His office door stood open. The room barely resembled the space I remembered. The carpet had been stripped down to bare concrete. The wallpaper was gone, exposing uneven drywall. Boxes of books lined the hallway, carefully labeled and sealed. But it was the far wall that stopped me cold. The wall behind Jonathan's old bookcase was gone entirely. In its place was an opening. Not a hole, not damage, a doorway. Daniel flicked on a work light and stepped aside. "What you are seeing was hidden behind a false wall. We only noticed it when we checked the studs for the electrical update. There was a seam that should not have been there." Lucas stepped closer, his voice low. "You are saying my dad built this?" Daniel nodded. "Years ago, professional work. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing." I felt Ryan tense beside me as we moved into the space. The hidden room was small but precise. Shelving ran from floor to ceiling along every wall. Each shelf was filled with folders, hundreds of them, neatly arranged, labeled by name and date and handwriting. I recognized instantly Jonathan's. My breath caught. This was not storage. This was not sentimentality. This was cataloging. I reached for the nearest folder without thinking. Inside were photographs. A man entering a restaurant, the same man speaking with someone outside a parking garage, bank statements, handwritten notes, dates spanning years. I closed it and opened another. More faces, more places, more details. Ryan grabbed one from a higher shelf and flipped it open, his face drained of color. "Mom," he whispered, "these are people we know." Lucas was staring at a folder on the lower shelf. "This one just has a year on it, no name." He pulled it out and handed it to me. 1996. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photographs of a younger Jonathan standing with a woman I had never seen before, hotel receipts, airline tickets, handwritten notes describing meetings and conversations, not romantic, observational. At the bottom of the folder was a single sentence written in my husband's careful script, subject aware, risk elevated. I staggered back as if the room had tilted. This was not an affair. This was surveillance. Daniel cleared his throat. "There is more." He gestured to the far corner. A metal safe had been built directly into the wall, its edges perfectly flush, nearly invisible without the wall torn away. "We did not open it," he said. "We thought that should be your decision." Ryan turned toward me, his voice sharp with disbelief. "Mom, what was Dad doing?" I looked around the hidden room at the shelves, the files, the years of quiet documentation, and for the first time since Jonathan died, a terrifying thought took shape. My husband did not just design buildings, he built systems, and whatever this system was, it was never meant for me to find. Ryan was already kneeling in front of the safe before I could answer. It was a simple keypad, for digits, worn smooth from use. He tried our anniversary first. Nothing. Then Jonathan's birthday. Nothing again. Lucas watched the shelves instead of the lock. His eyes moved slowly, carefully, like he was reading a map. "Dad planned everything," he said quietly. "If this is here, it means he expected someone to find it eventually." That sentence sent a chill through me. Ryan tried another code. The keypad beeped, then clicked. The door swung open. Inside were 3 items placed with deliberate care: a thick, leather-bound notebook, a stack of old digital storage drives, sealed in plastic, and a passport. Ryan lifted the passport first. It was Jonathan's face, Jonathan's eyes, but the name was not my husband's. My knees weakened, and I reached for the edge of the shelf to steady myself. "That is not possible," I said, though my voice did not sound convincing even to me. Lucas took the notebook. His hands trembled as he opened it. Every page was filled with Jonathan's handwriting, dates, names, dollar amounts, locations, short notes written in precise language, paid in full, file closed, risk neutralized. Ryan flipped through faster, his jaw tightening. "These are transactions, consulting fees, maybe off the books." Lucas shook his head. "These are not fees. There are no contracts, no services listed, just outcomes." My mind raced backward through memories I had never questioned. Jonathan leaving early, coming home late, trips, he said, were inspections or city consultations. The way he never talked about certain projects, I had called it professionalism. What if it was something else entirely? I picked up one of the storage drives. It was labeled only with a date that made my breath catch. The year our youngest son nearly died in a car accident caused by a drunk driver who vanished without charges ever filed. The driver had never been found. I set the drive down slowly. Ryan exhaled sharply. "Mom, you need to tell us if you knew about any of this." I met his eyes and saw something I had never seen there before. Fear, not for himself. For me, I knew nothing, I said. And in that moment, I understood how little that mattered, because whether I knew or not, I had lived inside the protection of whatever this was. Lucas turned another page in the notebook and froze. "Mom, there is a section in here marked with your name." My heart slammed against my ribs. He hesitated, then handed the notebook to me. There it was, my name written in the same careful script as everything else. Evelyn Carter, status protected, no dates, no payments, just that single phrase. Protected from what? Ryan stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "This is not just shady, this is dangerous. Dad was involved in something that could get people killed." As if summoned by his words, a sound echoed faintly through the house. Footsteps, not ours. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face tense. "Mrs. Carter, I need to tell you something. Before I called you today, someone came by the house." Ryan snapped to attention. "Who?" "A man. He said he was checking permits, asked questions about the renovation, about the office. Daniel swallowed. He knew exactly where to look. Silence filled the room. Lucas spoke first. He was not asking. He was stating a fact. Dad was not the only one who knew this room existed, and whoever else knew had just realized it was exposed. The knock came less than an hour later. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm enough to announce authority. Daniel stiffened. Ryan moved instinctively in front of me, while Lucas stepped closer to the doorway of the hidden room, his eyes scanning the shelves, as if trying to memorize everything at once. I followed the sound down the hallway, my heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I opened the front door, two men stood on my porch, dark jackets, neutral expressions, no visible weapons. Mrs. Evelyn Carter, the taller one, said. My name already sounded wrong in his mouth. My name is Samuel Reeves. This is my partner. We need to speak with you about your late husband's estate. Something in his tone told me this was not a request. Ryan appeared beside me. My mother does not answer questions without counsel. Reeves nodded, almost sympathetically. We are not here to accuse anyone. We are following up on irregularities tied to a former associate of your husband who has recently gone missing. Missing? The word landed heavier than he intended. Inside, Lucas had gone still. I could see him through the doorway, his gaze fixed on the hidden room, as if it might vanish if he looked away. Please, I said, come in. The men stepped inside, their eyes moving quickly, professionally, taking in the stripped walls, the renovation debris, the open doorway to the office. Reeves stopped when he saw it. The exposed wall, the absence of surprise on his face told me everything. You found it, he said quietly. Ryan's head snapped toward him. You already knew this room existed. Reeves did not deny it. Your husband was part of an ongoing federal inquiry. Mrs. Carter, he was not a suspect. He was a source. The word hung in the air. A source of what? Lucas asked from behind us. Information, Reeves replied, about people who did not want their pasts revisited. I felt the room sway slightly. My husband had not been hiding from the government. He had been working with it or around it or against it. Reeves continued. 3 days ago, a man named Oliver Kemp disappeared. He handled private asset transfers connected to several individuals whose names appear in your husband's files. The last confirmed location ping from his phone was less than 2 miles from this house. Ryan's voice was low and controlled. And you think my father had something to do with it? We think your husband knew what Kemp was afraid of, Reeves said. And now that Jonathan Carter is gone, other people are trying to retrieve what he left behind. As if to underline his words, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number. I did not want to open it, but I did. Stop digging. Some rooms should stay closed. Lucas read it over my shoulder, his face drained of color. They know we are here, he said. Reeves nodded grimly. That is why we need to secure everything in that room tonight. Ryan stepped forward. You cannot just take it. This is our family. Reeves met his gaze. And right now, your family is in danger. He lowered his voice. Mrs. Carter, your husband was very careful. Careful enough to keep you safe for decades. But the moment that wall came down, the protection he built started to fail. Another vibration. Another message. If you open the safe again, your children pay the price. I felt something inside me harden. For years, I had been the one protected, shielded, unaware. But the moment my sons were threatened, fear gave way to something else. Resolve. I looked at Reeves. You said my husband was a source. Yes, then you are going to help me understand exactly what he was protecting and who. Because whoever is sending these messages thinks I will stop. I met his eyes steadily. They do not know who my husband married. And they have no idea what a mother is willing to face when her children are no longer safe. Reeves asked us to sit down, but my legs refused. I stood in the center of the ruined office, surrounded by the bones of my husband's secret life, while my phone felt heavier in my pocket with every unanswered question. Ryan hovered near the doorway, jaw tight. Lucas had not taken his eyes off the shelves once. There is something else you need to know, Reeves said carefully. Something Jonathan insisted remained sealed unless a specific condition was met. I looked at him. And what condition is that? If the room was found, he said. If the wall ever came down. Lucas turned sharply. He knew this would happen. Reeves nodded once. Your husband prepared for this scenario years ago. He gestured toward the leather notebook still open on the desk, toward my name written there, toward the single word beneath it, protected. Reeves lowered his voice. Mrs. Carter, Jonathan was not collecting information to gain power for himself. He was building leverage to keep something buried. Something about me. The realization struck like a physical blow. Ryan shook his head. That makes no sense. Our mother has never been involved in anything like this. Reeves did not argue. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin folder, unmarked, worn at the edges, as if it had been handled many times. Jonathan gave this to us under strict instructions. He said it was not to be opened unless you were present. My heart began to race. He placed the folder on the desk and slid it toward me. Inside was a birth certificate. Not mine. It listed a different name, a different city, a different set of parents, but the date was the same. My date? This is wrong, I whispered. Lucas leaned in, reading over my shoulder. Mom. The room seemed to tilt. Memories surged forward, uninvited. Fragments I had dismissed my entire life. A house I could never quite picture clearly. A woman's voice, calling a name that did not sound like Evelyn. The smell of smoke that sometimes visited my dreams for no reason at all. Reeves spoke softly. You were not born Evelyn Carter. You were adopted after a residential fire when you were 6 years old. Both adults in the home died. You were the only survivor. Ryan stared at him in disbelief. You are saying our mother is a witness to a crime? Yes, Reeves said, and the crime was never solved. I backed away from the desk, my breath shallow. No, my parents died when I was in college. I buried them. You buried the people who raised you, Reeves corrected. The people who saved you by giving you a new name. Lucas's voice broke. Dad knew. Jonathan discovered the discrepancy while doing background work early in your marriage. Reeves hesitated. He did not tell you because the people connected to that fire were still alive, still powerful, still capable of erasing loose ends. Silence filled the room. My husband had married a woman whose past could get her killed, and he had chosen to protect that secret at any cost. That is why your name has no payments attached. Reeves continued. Jonathan never took money for you. Everything he built was to make sure no one ever went looking for who you used to be. My knees gave out, and Ryan caught me before I fell. I felt grief then, not just for Jonathan, but for the child I had been. The truth I had never been allowed to remember. Lucas whispered, the messages, the threats, they are not about Dad. No, I said, finally, understanding, they are about me. And somewhere out there, someone had just realized that the woman they thought had disappeared decades ago was still alive and no longer hidden. The first blow did not come to me. It came to my sons. The next morning, Reeves returned with 2 other agents. Their faces were grim in a way that made my stomach drop before they said a word. Someone accessed Jonathan's old network backups overnight. Reeves said, whoever has been circling this house is not guessing anymore. They are moving. Ryan's phone rang as if summoned by the sentence. He answered, listened for less than 10 seconds, then slowly lowered the phone. The color drained from his face. That was my firm, he said. There is an investigation. Someone leaked internal emails under my name. They are accusing me of fraud. If this sticks, I lose everything. Lucas's phone buzzed. Next, he read the message, swallowed hard, and looked up at me with eyes only seen once before. The day Jonathan died. The school district put me on leave, he said. They received an anonymous complaint. They are saying I altered records, that I took money. I felt something inside me snap into place. This was not intimidation. This was eradication. They were not trying to scare me into silence. They were trying to leave me with nothing to protect. Reeves nodded slowly. This is how they operate. They isolate, destroy credibility, remove support systems. By the time the truth comes out, no one is left standing to tell it. I pressed my hands flat against the table, forcing myself to breathe. Jonathan had prepared for this. I could feel it. Every file, every date, every contingency. There has to be something else, I said. Something my husband left that they did not find. Reeves hesitated. There are references in his notes to recordings, physical ones, not digital. He wrote that they were stored somewhere meaningful, somewhere no one else would think to search. Lucas looked up sharply. Meaningful to him, or to you? Both, Reeves said. My mind began to move differently then, not in panic, in patterns. Jonathan never hid the most important things where logic alone could find them. He hid them where emotion would guide the search. And suddenly I knew the attic, not the storage attic, the crawl space above the hallway where Jonathan used to climb with the boys when they were young. The place, he said, made him feel grounded because it reminded him that every structure needed a hidden support. Reeves sent a team immediately. They returned 30 minutes later carrying a small fireproof case wrapped in insulation. Inside was an old recording device and a single envelope addressed to me in Jonathan's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "If you are reading this," he had written, "then they have found you again, and I am not there to stop them." I closed my eyes. Inside the case was a recording dated 3 weeks before his death. Reeves played it. Jonathan's voice filled the room. Calm, controlled, familiar. "Evelyn, if this is happening, then the people connected to the fire know you are alive. They always feared this moment, that you would remember, that someone would listen." There was a pause, then another voice. Older, rougher, nervous. "I recognize you," the man said. "I recognized you the first time I saw you at that charity event years ago. You did not remember me, but I never forgot your face." My blood ran cold. Jonathan spoke again. "Say your name." A sigh. Then, James Hollis Reeves stiffened. "That name is not in any of our databases. That is because it is not his real one," Jonathan said on the recording. "He has used at least 4 identities since the fire." The man laughed softly. "You should have let it go, Jonathan. She was safe, quiet, forgotten." Jonathan's voice hardened. "You do not get to decide when a witness stops existing." The recording ended abruptly. Silence swallowed the room. Lucas whispered, "He is still alive." "Yes," Reeves said. "And now he knows that you know." Outside, a car engine idled too long at the curb. I stood up slowly. Jonathan had spent his life building walls. It was time I walked through them. The car did not leave. It sat there across the street, engine humming, lights off, a shape barely visible through the afternoon glare. Reeves noticed it at the same moment I did. I could tell by the way his posture changed, by the way his hand moved just slightly toward his jacket. "Everyone stay inside," he said quietly. Ryan stepped toward the window anyway. "That is not one of the neighbors." "No," Reeves agreed. "And it is not coincidence." The front doorbell rang once, slow, deliberate. My heart should have raced. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when fear finally runs out of places to hide. "I know who it is," I said. Ryan turned to me sharply. "Mom, do not open that door." "I will not run anymore," I replied. "Not after everything Jonathan gave up to keep me alive." Reeves signaled his team, weapons drawn, but lowered. He moved to the side of the doorway. "Mrs. Carter, if you are wrong, I am not." I opened the door. The man on my porch was in his late 60s, well-dressed, careful in the way men are when they have learned how to disappear in plain sight. His hair was neatly trimmed, his smile practiced, the face of someone who had spent a lifetime pretending to be harmless. "Evelyn Carter," he said pleasantly. "Or should I say the name you were born with?" Ryan surged forward, but Reeves blocked him. "You should not be here," the man continued, his eyes never leaving mine. "This did not have to end like this. Your husband made it messy. You set a house on fire," I said. "You killed 2 people and tried to erase a child." His smile flickered just for a second. "I was a boy following orders," he said. "Powerful men do not like loose ends. And for 40 years, I said, you watched me. You waited." He shrugged lightly. "You lived well. You were happy. That should have been enough." Jonathan disagreed, I replied. The man's expression hardened. "Jonathan should have minded his buildings and left ghosts alone." Reeves raised his weapon. "James Hollis, you are under arrest." The man laughed, soft and incredulous. "You still think that is my name?" In one swift motion, he reached inside his jacket. Time fractured. I moved without thinking. The letter opener Jonathan had given me years ago from my desk lay in my hand, cold and solid. I stepped forward as the man lunged, driving it into his forearm with every ounce of strength I had. He screamed, staggering back. Reeves tackled him to the ground. As agents poured onto the porch, weapons trained, commands shouted. The man fought with the desperation of someone who had never been caught before. But age and arrogance had finally betrayed him. He was handcuffed within seconds. As they dragged him up, he looked at me with something like disbelief. "You were supposed to stay quiet," he hissed. "Stay grateful." I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "You underestimated me," I said, "and you underestimated my husband." The man was pulled away, his carefully constructed life collapsing in the open daylight. Ryan rushed to my side, his hands gripping my shoulders. "Mom, are you hurt?" I shook my head. "No, but it is not over yet." Reeves nodded grimly. "He will talk. Men like him always do once the mask is gone." As the car pulled away, sirens fading into the distance, I felt the weight of 40 years lift just slightly from my chest. The hunter had finally stepped into the light, and he had chosen the wrong woman to face him. The house was silent after they took him away, not the hollow silence of fear, but the kind that settles after a storm has passed and the ground is still wet beneath your feet. Reeves stayed with us through the night while agents processed the evidence Jonathan had hidden so carefully, the files, the recording, the envelope meant only for me. Piece by piece, the truth was no longer something that lived only in shadows. James Hollis was not his real name. It never had been. By morning, they had uncovered 2 more identities, a trail of quiet relocations, and a pattern of lives destroyed wherever he had settled. The fire from my childhood was not his last crime. It was his first lesson in how easily the world could be convinced to look away. Jonathan had seen that pattern long before anyone else did. When Reeves returned the next afternoon, his expression was different, lighter. "We have a full confession," he said, "and corroboration." He named the people Jonathan had documented, the ones who had helped cover the fire, the ones who paid to keep the truth buried. "Several arrests will follow." Ryan and Lucas sat on either side of me. For the first time in days, neither of them looked like they were bracing for impact. "Your husband was not a criminal in the way this man was," Reeves continued. "He broke laws. He crossed lines, but everything he did was built around one goal: keeping you alive." I closed my eyes. Jonathan had loved me imperfectly, fiercely, and in a way that cost him everything. After the agents left, I walked back into the room that had started it all. The hidden room was being sealed permanently. The shelves were empty now, the files boxed and gone, the safe removed, the wall ready to be closed as if it had never existed. I stood there alone and understood something Jonathan never had the chance to learn. Protection built on fear always demands a higher price. That night, I made my final choice. With full cooperation from investigators, I handed over everything tied to real crimes: fraud, violence, murder. Anyone who had truly harmed others would face justice. But the rest, the secrets that served no purpose beyond control and silence, I destroyed. I watched them burn until nothing remained but ash. I would not become the keeper of fear. The renovation was finished weeks later. Jonathan's office became what I had first imagined: a quiet library filled with light, a place for my grandchildren to read, a place where no one whispered and no walls hid anything. I was 62 years old when I learned the truth about my past, about my marriage, about the man I loved, and the danger he carried for me. And I was strong enough to face all of it. I am not the frightened child who survived a fire. I am not the woman who lived unknowingly under protection. I am someone who chose truth over fear and life over silence. Before this story ends, here are the 5 lessons it left me with. First, not every secret is kept for selfish reasons, but every secret has a cost. Second, being underestimated is not a weakness. It is often your greatest advantage. Third, truth does not always protect you immediately, but it always gives you power. Fourth, you can honor love without excusing the harm done in its name. Fifth, courage is not loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and patient enough to wait for the right moment. If you were in my place, what would you have done? What lesson did you take from this story? Tell me in the comments and let me know which city you are watching from. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who believes strength has no age, and comment below.